Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. No matter where you are joining us from, I am so pleased to be able to welcome you to this important webinar. Reimagine Resilience lies at the core of a larger mission. It represents the emergence of an essential and innovative era of inquiry that addresses targeted, hate-fueled violence. This work looks at the role that both educators and students can play in our schools and communities to prevent hate and violence. I simply cannot imagine a more timely and vital pursuit. I am honored to lead an institution that so often leads the way. Once again, Teachers College stands at the cutting edge of this question. How can education be used to address our most pressing societal challenges? Throughout our history, we have been forerunners and pioneers, looking at issues that matter, committing resources, and creating solutions. Teachers College could not be more fortunate than to have Dr. Amra Shabic El-Rayes at the helm of the Reimagine Resilience team. She has been recognized nationally and internationally. She just met with President Biden and discussed her work. And the Department of Homeland Security's Center for Prevention, Programs, and Partnerships has awarded her 2 separate grants, totaling $1.5 million, to bring this groundbreaking platform to classrooms. The first grant of $750,000 has funded the creation of Reimagine Resilience, a 30-hour professional training program open to all U.S. educators and educational staff that Dr. Shabic El-Rayes and her team will be introducing this evening. Professor Shabic El-Rayes, who grew up in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is a leading voice on countering hate and targeted violence. Her critically acclaimed memoir, The Cat I Never Named, a true story of love, war, and survival, chronicles her survival as a Muslim teenager in the midst of the Bosnian genocide. A prequel, titled 3 Summers, expands on her story of resilience and will be available next spring. This lived experience and her research as a scholar have driven her to focus on why societies fall apart and what role education can play in rebuilding resilient communities. How do we make sure that we build educational practices, develop relationships, and connect human beings so that everyone feels valued? Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Amra, for your extraordinary work, all that is still to come. I now turn the program over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here with us, and thank you, President Bailey, for your kind words of introduction. My team and I are deeply grateful for TC's institutional support of our collective efforts to address a global rise in race, religion, and ethnicity-based hate and violence. We also thank the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Center for Prevention, Programs, and Partnerships that has awarded us an innovation grant of $750,000 to develop Reimagine Resilience and provide free access to this professional training program to all schools, educational institutions, and educational professionals in the United States. As we begin, I want to recognize my team members, educators who truly are my unparalleled allies and partners in this important work. Vic Joshi, Tina Kiswani, Lauren Gonzalez, and Brooke Tucker. In the second portion of this webinar, you will hear directly from Lauren, Tina, and Vic as we engage in a dialogue and they share specific details on the structure of the Reimagine Resilience training program to answer your questions. We are grateful to Brooke, who is supporting us off the screen during today's event. Together, we have worked tirelessly to expand Reimagine Resilience, a first ever professional training platform for educators and educational staff that addresses the adverse impact of hate, displacement, extremism, and related violence in educational institutions. For us, building resilience to hate isn't a project, but a way of life, our shared mission, and a guiding philosophy and pedagogy within and beyond the classroom. We dare to dream of a world where hate has no place, and today is about inviting you to join us in building that world in our schools and communities. As I share with you some of my research on radicalization, hate, and extremism, I will begin with the story of how my own lived experience was transformed by hate and informs my intersectional positionality as a scholar, genocide survivor, and educator. Secondly, storytelling allows us to visualize and imagine a context that enables the most extreme forms of targeted violence. Genocide, defined as an organized persecution of an entire group of people based on their identity with the intent to eradicate their physical existence, their culture, and their shared histories. This unique and intersectional approach can help us understand the growing transnational hate movement that has fused the anti-Black racism, anti-Muslim racism, anti-Asian racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and other expressions of identity-based hate into a dangerous but a formidable force that undermines social cohesion. I will begin by reading a segment from my memoir titled The Cat I Never Named, a true story of love, war, and survival, published by Bloomsbury in the fall of 2020. But first, I invite you to self-reflect on how you would define violence. Simply, what is violence for you? And how do you think violence manifests in America today? The Cat I Never Named, a story of love, war, and survival. Chapter 1. Math, puzzles, logic, ciphers. My brain is still whirling from the battery of tests as I ride the train from Belgrade, Serbia, back home to Bihać, Bosnia. The tracks push westward, the setting sun gilding the hillsides. Families, mothers, children patter and laugh, scold and squeal in a comfortable cacophony that lets me almost doze off. I'm sleepy from a long day of tests, and I'll be lucky to get home by 1 a.m. A few stops later, the families get off, soldiers get on, and I realize with a sinking feeling that I'll be lucky to get home at all. I lower my eyes at once as men stomp down the aisles. I don't have to look to know they're Chetniks, the most vehement Serbian nationalists. They're dressed in black with weird tall hats. The men have beards, wild hair, and hate in their eyes for anyone who is not Serb. I saw them all over the streets of Belgrade, sneering and shouting at anyone they thought might be Muslim, quoting Slobodan Milosevic's hateful speeches. "Aren't you afraid?" I'd asked my cousin Jana. "It's not a big deal," she replied with an indifferent shrug. "People feel like they can just say anything these days. But when these soldiers invade my train, I fear that they'll have far more than words for the lone teenage Muslim girl." Within seconds, the stench of them fills the train car. It is aggressively masculine and rank. Sweat, liquor, grease, and gunpowder. They jangle like marchers in a macabre parade as their belts and bandoliers full of ammunition clang. "Did you hear the way he begged for his life?" one barks. "The Croatians, they're not real men," their commander says. "But they're women," the first one leers. "Black-eyed angels." "Nothing to compare with Balije women, though," a soldier says. Balije is an insulting word for Muslims. I've heard they're like rabbits, eager and soft. The commander cuffs him on the head, and he reels drunkenly. You don't fall in love with them, you idiot. You put syrup seeds in their bellies. He grabs the soldier by the collar. You wipe them out generation by generation. You dilute their unclean blood. You honor them with half-syrup babies, and one day they will be gone from this earth, and only Serbs will remain. Another Chetnik chuckles menacingly. I don't think they realize they're being honored. One I had screamed so loud. Their conversation is lost as they head to the back of the train. I tuck up my knees, curling myself as small as possible as I fix my eyes out the window. I want to run off this train, but would that be any better? I'm still in a Serb-controlled region. At least now I'm heading home. I can't decide, and then it's too late. The train is moving again. You might wonder why I selected this opening chapter to The Cat I Never Named. Life is a book with many pages. But many children are told by everything they see around them that they aren't a vital part of the world's story. Some are victims of racism and hate. Others are refugees seen as aliens in their new homes. Many suffer from economic deprivation. Whatever makes a child seem like an outsider has the potential to rob them of the opportunity to be the main characters in their own narrative. When a child's very identity is displaced from their culture and educational system, how can they find their place in the world? I first formally explored the idea of what I now call educational displacement as I studied radicalized individuals to understand their process of transformation from an ordinary person into a hate-filled adult. What I learned is that radicalization actually doesn't begin with the intent to hate. We tend to see extremism when a person is already fully radicalized or has committed an act of mass violence. But the process starts much earlier, often in an educational setting. These individuals begin to feel invisible or voiceless in the classroom or among their peers. Their grievances, whatever their nature, remain unaddressed, motivating them to search for alternative places of belonging, acceptance, and recognition. While not all educationally displaced individuals radicalize, our research finds that educational displacement is a significant risk factor for radicalization. Within Reimagine Resilience, we provide hours of thoughtfully designed and curated activities and resources to ensure you as educators understand exactly what educational displacement is, what types of educational displacement exist in varied contexts, and what practices we can deploy to prevent it. But please allow me to share some simple examples with you to demonstrate the profound impact of educational displacement. Growing up in the former Yugoslavia as a young girl, I remember feeling marginalized in the educational system. I fantasized about encountering Amra as the main character in one of my school readings, perhaps depicted as an excellent student or a funny girl or a good friend. But Muslim girls with names like Amra were invisible to our educational system. We were not present in our school readings. We only lived in the popular culture in jokes that ridiculed Bosnian Muslims as stupid and worthless. I knew I was being educated into seeing myself as a lesser. To belong, education was my only outlet for action. But none of my efforts produced a sense of belonging. I was what I call in my scholarly work today educationally displaced. From the class conversations, literature, and activities despite my academic achievements. I was voiceless and invisible in the books I read, often targeted by some of my Serb teachers. This exclusion was neither incidental or accidental. The educational system in the former Yugoslavia was designed to transpose Bosnian Muslims, their lived experiences and representations from the mainstream curriculum in schools. The goal was to engender a feeling of a lesser contribution, meaning, and value to society, relative to the holders of the privileged identities. The goal was, in fact, to normalize the humanization of the targeted group. By the late 1980s, Serbia had the rising demagogue Slobodan Milošević, a political leader who took control over the military, politics, and media in the former Yugoslavia as he engaged in fear-mongering. What I had experienced in the classroom was now magnified in all spheres of life. Milošević started to propagate the victimhood narrative, claiming Serbs were under the threat of the rising diversity, urging them to prepare to take up weapons and transform former Yugoslavia into Greater Serbia, a country for Serbs only. He and his underlings likened Bosniaks to a form of ethnic impurity in Christian Europe. By June of 1992, the mass radicalization of many ordinary Serbs was achieved. The Serb forces besieged my city, and artillery was placed on the hills around my hometown of Bihać. We no longer had access to food, electricity, phones, or the outside world. The Serb forces were bombing and killing us daily, under the military siege that lasted for nearly 1,200 days, longer than the infamous siege of Leningrad in World War II. Death defined the next 4 years of my life. During those years, every day someone I loved, I played with, or I knew died. This example shows how displacing diverse stories from our curricula affect the whole society. I have spent years researching how people radicalize. Irrespective of their contexts, they radicalize either because they themselves experienced educational displacement, or because the educational displacement of the targeted group to which they do not belong robbed them of exposure to learning about diversity and lessened their social connectedness within diverse communities. Let me give you another example. I recently interviewed Jeanette Manning for Reimagine Resilience about her experience as a parent whose daughter, Lauren, radicalized and espoused fascism and far-right ideologies. They co-authored a powerful narrative of resilience, walking away from hate or journey through extremism. When I asked Lauren's mother about when she thought Lauren's radicalization started, she recalled her daughter's first negative experience at the end of 2nd grade, when a teacher ridiculed Lauren for an answer she offered during a classroom discussion. Lauren later writes about her radicalization online after a recruiter moved in with the pitch, quote, "I created an account educating myself every day about how liberal whites were brainwashed. The recruiter referred to everyone outside of the movement as sheep, telling me it was good to be different, so this new knowledge made me feel better than they were." End of quote. If a school population that is predominantly white, for example, doesn't include curricula involving people of different races, the white children will find their own ways to define the other, including from friends, media, online spaces that may promote prejudice, or extremist recruiters like the one who recruited Lauren into a neo-Nazi movement. It is in these online spaces that the extremist groups dehumanize and instill fear of the targeted other. Recent research shows that even online games have been used effectively by extremists to prey on American youth. When students' narratives are displaced from our curricula and classroom dialogues, we shouldn't be surprised that they turn to informal and potentially radicalizing spaces where their stories can be told and their grievances can be freely expressed. We conducted research this year with 620 educators and students in over 40 US states. Of the total number of students, 62% were white, 15% were Black or African American, 17% were Asian, and 4% were Middle Eastern. Our research shows that only 35% of those students feel that what they learn in school reflects their interests. Only 38% feel the teachers at their schools include them in classroom activities. And only 40% have a sense of belonging in their educational institutions. If we ban talking about what matters to our students, they will find someone who will listen. Extremists are very good listeners. They secure new followers by capitalizing on students' grievances and presenting them with solutions that can lead to radicalization. Our research confirms that only 15% of students don't have a need to search for other sources of information outside school. 73% of the students we surveyed feel marginalized or silenced by their teachers. And 60% feel marginalized or silenced by their peers. While American policymakers and parents argue about which books to ban and whose stories to displace from the curricula, extremists are growing their ranks by recruiting our youth into their hate platforms. Critics of diverse stories have failed to recognize that diverse narratives are a method of building our collective resilience to hate. Diverse storytelling is a protective factor against hate and targeted violence. Our work has also shown that the top 3 biases students witness in their schools are anti-Black bias, gender bias, and anti-Muslim bias. It is less likely for an American Muslim girl to be a target of hate or feel displaced from the classroom if she and her classmates get to read The Cat I Never Named and learn of a resilient, nerdy Muslim girl who played volleyball, loved her cat, and taught herself English while surviving the Bosnian genocide. If she's heard, seen, and represented in the classroom, the Muslim American student is less likely to seek an alternative place of belonging online. But again, a Muslim student isn't the only one benefiting from this story. It is also less likely for a non-Muslim student to be susceptible to extremist recruitment or to engage in bullying of a Muslim peer after reading a story with a Muslim character in it and realizing that they are alike in their love of education, sports, music, and pets. If we sterilize textbooks and classroom conversations from genuine and diverse narratives, we are redirecting our students, all our students, to the unmonitored online spaces where extremists lurk for new recruits. Using diverse narratives in our classrooms is not about taking power away from one group in the name of another, but rather preventing educational displacement as a new form of narrative and cultural violence. You might ask yourself again, what is violence? Cultural violence, as Galtung has defined it, are the narratives of exclusion, supremacy, and racism that are root causes to all forms of direct violence. Educational displacement is, therefore, a type of cultural, curricular, and narrative violence, the act of killing a Black person on an American street or raping a Muslim girl during the Bosnian genocide to degrade her sense of self are possible only if dehumanization, racism, and exclusion are normalized through cultural and narrative violence in our classrooms, institutions, and communities. This is why we are inviting you, American educators, to help us prevent and eradicate educational displacement in our schools, curricula, and classroom practices. Together, we can help all our students become more resilient to hate in the undeniably diverse America, our America. Vic, you serve as our team's outreach, research, and partnership lead on Reimagine Resilience. And in that role, you have communicated directly and effectively with hundreds of educators, schools, and institutions of higher education across the country. Today is our official launch date for Reimagine Resilience, but we already have about 400 educators enrolled in Reimagine Resilience thanks to your efforts. For those who are hearing for the first time about Reimagine Resilience and are wondering if this professional training program is right for them, what would you say to them? Who is the Reimagine Resilience Program for?
It's a good question, Amra. Reimagine Resilience is for educators from pre-K through K through 12 and higher education. Reimagine Resilience is for educational staff. If you work in a school, you can enroll with us. Reimagine Resilience is for leadership too, vice principals, principals, provosts, and deans. Reimagine Resilience is also for those who work in informal spaces and places of education. If you engage in educational programming, then this program is open to you. Our enrollment numbers have been rising fast, and it is exciting to see all the groups above present in the program. We sincerely believe in cultivating a community of inquiry at Reimagine Resilience, so all of you will learn about each other as you move through our program. With such a wide range of experiences in education present in the Reimagine Resilience community, we ourselves are excited to see what comes out of your engagement with our lessons and activities.
Lauren, what role can educators play in instilling resilience in themselves and their students?
Amra, educators in schools are best positioned to promote these resiliency building competencies as they are the individuals that are in the environments where students are spending the most of their time. The Reimagine Resilience Program developed a resiliency to hate framework, which supports educators in schools in preventing educational displacement. Our courses provide educational professionals with the tools to pass these competencies through their curriculum and school management practices to bolster student resilience. It focuses on building capacities for self-awareness, community awareness, mentorship, media and digital literacy, community building and engagement, social connectedness, empathy, and nonviolent problem solving. Our goal is for schools and educational professionals to integrate these capacities into their school-based practices and pedagogy to prevent hate and violence among students. To date, there are very few initiatives or interventions focusing on providing educators with the tools to develop resiliency in their students and prevent violence and hatred, which is why we developed the Reimagine Resilience Program.
Tina, you serve as our technology, media, and creative lead, and your brilliance has helped us produce a very engaging program. Can you please elaborate for our audience how the Reimagine Resilience Program is structured?
So the Reimagine Resilience Program is 30 hours of asynchronous online training available through the Teachers College Canvas learning management system. The program is both for educators and educational staff in the US, and it's made up of 10 courses. 1 is mandatory and 9 are optional, but highly recommended. Each course ranges from about 2 to 6 hours and are interconnected, increasing that toolkit of skills and knowledge to build protective factors against hate and violence. We strongly encourage all our learners to take the full program to understand these breadth of techniques and to hear the range of stories that can be utilized to prevent hate and violence in our youth. So we grant every participant with a continuing education unit and a certificate of completion for each and every single course. The program is offered at no cost through July 2023. And we can also come to your school and do a workshop of the first course physically with staff, and this also offers CEU credits.
Lauren, storytelling is an important pedagogical tool we use throughout Reimagine Resilience. We deploy storytelling through film, including an Oscar-nominated movie, gamified learning, videos crowdsourced from our learners, audio, graphics, and text. Can you please elaborate on why storytelling matters?
So storytelling is an essential classroom practice for maintaining a positive school and classroom climate. It can play a critical role in allowing students to feel visible and represented in the classroom and provide an outlet to be understood. Storytelling opens the door to engage with difficult topics while invoking empathy and understanding. Storytelling can enhance self-awareness, community awareness, and social connectedness by helping students assess new themes, insights, and connections to their community. Lastly, storytelling can engage individuals in self-reflection, critical thinking, and perspective seeking. This can be done by asking students to reflect on their own background, which informs their assumptions about the characters and stories. It provides opportunities for inquiry, engagement, and curiosity. Within the Reimagine Resilience Program, we promote stories which show resilience to violence to highlight why violence and hate might occur and how to best prevent it. For us, it's crucial to lift up stories of resilience to violence to protect against stories and narratives of othering and exclusion.
Vic, can you please tell us what collaboration and partnership with the Reimagine Resilience team looks like? In other words, what should institutions and educators know about working with us, with our team, should they want to partner with us?
Well, as you know, Amra, we have a saying in our Reimagine Resilience team: we lead with curiosity, not conclusions. I begin with this because I would like to explain our approach to collaboration and partnerships before describing ways educators, educational staff, schools, and districts can partner with us. Whenever we deliver a workshop at a school, a presentation to a principal or superintendent, or an interactive lesson to teachers and staff, learning about the community is key. Every district, every school, and every classroom are different, and it's only by leading with curiosity that we can appreciate the culture of the classroom and school. So partnering with Reimagine Resilience may begin with discussions of how to bring this program to your educators and staff members. But that's truly just the beginning. We pride ourselves on keeping in touch with our partners and seeking critical feedback from them. As you know, Amra, we have organized countless book talks based on your memoir, The Cat I Never Named, and workshops for students in ways that integrate with the teachers' lesson plans. We have visited classrooms and school office spaces to offer lessons on resilience, storytelling, and the power of social connection. And we have given talks at student-led organizations and clubs as they seek to build community within their schools and beyond. We see ourselves as a dynamic team at Reimagine Resilience that is willing to listen, sustain the conversation, and respond to emerging challenges alongside our partners.
Tina, educators interested in this professional development program might wonder, why is Reimagine Resilience offered online?
So to provide teacher training at scale and support U.S. districts with large communities of educators, an easily accessible professional development course with plenty of opportunities for teachers to interact with those across the country as they're learning was a key component of the curriculum. Within the programs, learners will engage with a variety of learning modalities, including the interactives, polls, discussions, forums, video postings, and social media platforms. There are plenty of opportunities for feedback and reflection to help teachers move thoughtfully towards this expert vision of practice as they learn about topics and see models by other participants. And the online format also provides this flexibility. So participants are able to review content at their own pace, and they can revisit it when they want to. So this gives them plenty of time to apply their learning within the classroom. In an online self-paced classroom, every teacher can discuss their successes in their classroom and share their strategies and results. We realize juggling work and family and school isn't an easy thing to do. We admire this and recognize this time management skills that it takes to balance all three. So a self-paced online course meets the needs of our audience. As we're exposed to those across the country, we start to see that we actually have a shared set of values and understandings that guide action despite differences in backgrounds, experiences, race, or ethnicity.
Vic, as you know, though definitions of resilience have evolved over time, resilience is commonly understood as one's ability to face and recover from adversity. Why does resilience need to be reimagined?
You know, Amra, I remember watching the news after the shooting in Buffalo, New York. One phrase stuck in my head, which I have heard again and again after incidents of targeted violence. Each community member needs to be resilient at this time. There is no doubt that resilience in the face of such a tragedy is necessary. However, resilience is largely invoked after we have lost family, peers, educators, staff, students, and children. Reimagine Resilience is focused on violence prevention, not intervention. So we believe that resilience needs to be reimagined as a capacity that will protect us from narratives of hate, of othering, of division, and as a capacity that can only be truly realized together. It is not individual resilience, but a shared sense of community resilience that our program supports. Amra, you know, a resilient individual cannot create a safe and supportive classroom or school on their own, but a resilient community can.
Before they ended lives in Buffalo, El Paso, and Parkland, they were students who started down a similar path, a path that began with feeling invisible, resentful, and disconnected from their world. So they kept turning away and following a way that enabled others to lead them toward hate and even radicalization. But what if someone was there to say stop? What if it was a teacher like you? Together, we can help our students reconnect and reimagine life. Reimagine resilience.
Once again, hello to everyone who has joined us today. In this live segment of our webinar, we are going to address some of the questions that we have received from the audience. We have 250 individuals who have registered for this program as of yesterday. As you can imagine, we won't be able to answer all of your questions, but we have tried to consolidate them as much as possible. We are also and most certainly going to reflect on and discuss all of your questions as we continue to build and grow the Reimagine Resilience platform. Vic, we have a number of principals and senior educational leaders with us this evening who have asked for additional clarity on whether Reimagine Resilience is beneficial for staff who are not in the classroom. I think you are best positioned to address this question as our outreach and partnerships lead.
Thanks, Amra. It's a really important question. And I'm happy to say that when we think about our approach towards the Reimagine Resilience Program, we have a whole of society approach, which we share with the Centers of Prevention, Programs, and Partnerships. When we think about how this applies to schools, we have a whole of school approach. What does that mean? A whole of school approach means that we think that everyone in the school, whether inside or outside of the classroom, which includes educational staff, can become a violence prevention advocate. And that's why when you enroll and move through the Reimagine Resilience program, you will see lessons specifically designed for educators in some moments and for educational staff in others. So when they move through the program, you will have moments where you're engaging in common activities and in moments when you're engaging in activities specified for your function in the school. And that's why in our outreach and our partnerships, we encourage and we have seen in our outreach thus far entire staffs in a school across a district enroll in the program. This enables the entire staff to be going through the program together, discussing it with each other, the ideas they're learning, and this builds local prevention frameworks. So, looking at the next question, and I think Lauren, our curriculum lead, is best suited for this. The question is, how does the content and activities in the program translate into school-based practices and lessons?
Thank you, Vic. So we know that educators are overwhelmed with curricular requirements and how valuable class and work time is. So in developing the Reimagine Resilience program, our aim was really to have these lessons and pedagogical tools be easily adapted into whatever lessons or content the educators were implementing. So for example, in course one, we discussed the importance of creating an environment where students are seen and heard to prevent them from feeling isolated, disconnected, or educationally displaced. So in one of our activities, we walk the participants through a variety of school-based practices and considerations instructional and administrative school staff can take to ensure students feel visible in their school spaces. So this activity has them come up with ways that these practices can best be implemented into their school environment. These competencies can also be translated into higher education. So Tina, would you be able to tell us about the strategies that we use in higher education?
Thank you, Lauren. So educators are adults and we're all human. Every teacher at every grade level needs to have an awareness of their own biases and then strive to increase empathetic communication with each student. And this creates a classroom that remains respectful of differences and cultivates a sense of belonging. This goes beyond just being kind. Most people are unaware of biased attitudes they hold, and it can lead to unintentional discrimination and destructive outcomes in learning. Whether you're interacting with 4-year-olds or 20-year-olds, it's critical for teachers to recognize and overcome their own biases and be able to recognize them in others. Kids are exposed to everything adults are exposed to. So don't make an assumption that they don't care because they're kids or teenagers. Ask them questions. They usually have something to say. And that human connection to students, whether in a pre-K classroom or a college lecture room, is powerful and can make a difference in that student's lives. And we want to empower educators who in turn build resilience in their students of all ages to express their stories, experiences, ideas, and cultivate school environments where discussing race, ethnicity, and religion is met with sensitivity and empathy. And this is how we increase belonging in our classrooms, elementary school to college campuses. The next question we have is for Lauren. What has given you hope during the process of building Reimagine Resilience?
Thank you, Tina. So the support and interest that we've received from potential stakeholders across the country really gives me hope for the success for Reimagine Resilience.
Through our outreach, we've been able to garner interest from individual educators as well as partner with school districts and colleges to have their educators take our program. We've also been able to make incredible connections with organizations and individuals such as Big Brother, Big Sister, Music in Common, and as we previously mentioned in the webinar, Lauren and Jeanette Manning, who share our mission in developing resilience and preventing violence. The passion that we have seen for this topic is not only validates this, or the passion that we've seen for this topic not only validates that this is needed, but gives us hope that the schools are really dedicated to instilling these practices in their institutions. So our next question is for Vic. How does Reimagine Resilience engage with the fact that we're returning to classrooms after a pandemic?
Thanks, Lauren. Another really important question. I think from all of our outreach and all the partnerships we've built, we've seen that different communities are coming out of the pandemic in their own way. And one thing which our team really takes to heart is that each classroom, school, and school district is unique. So we like to meet schools where they are in their journey. And therefore, when you enter the Reimagine Resilience program, you will learn about your community members, those who are taking in the programs with you, and see where their schools, districts, and schooling environments are. One thing that we have noticed is that one part of coming out of the pandemic, which is shared across school districts, communities, and classrooms, is what was lost distinctively during the pandemic, and that is social connection. Without social connection, it is very difficult to cultivate a sense of belonging to the physical space in a classroom. And as Amra mentioned earlier this evening, without a sense of belonging, that seeds educational displacement. So the Reimagine Resilience program aims to cultivate social connectedness in the classroom, which is a key protective factor against radicalization. A recent report actually published a few months ago highlighted that peer rejection in schools is a significant indicator of social disconnection and a lack of belonging. So as we move out of this pandemic together in various different paces and ways, social connection is an integral part of our mission and an integral part of how we build partnerships and our competencies through the Reimagine Resilience program. The next question that I see is best suited again for Tina. And the question is, what does community building in your online program look like? Are participants creating any lessons during this program?
Thank you, Vic. Though virtual, an online community creates quite a sophisticated digital learning experience. Participants are reflecting and then reading and responding to their fellow learners' reflections on these very challenging topics. They're learning through social interaction, not just observation or direct instructions. There are many layers of learning our learners undergo through this social participation and engagement with the online community. As you read and respond and reflect, our goal for our members of the Reimagine Resilience community is to share stories, ideas, and problem solve together to achieve specific skill sets for their mutual benefit in their classrooms. They're also creating activities that they can translate into the classroom. So as an example, we have one activity where educators can create a lesson based on their backgrounds and experiences to express their identity. And this is a story-based activity where they get to talk about themselves. Learners can use photos, graphics, videos, or audio, giving students an opportunity to express themselves with a modality that they are comfortable with. And this is something that our learners first do on their own, and then they share with the community of educators across the United States. And we ask them to create this lesson to mimic it in the classroom to allow their students to get comfortable with storytelling. Our next question is for Amra. Should greater investment be placed in preventing educational displacement and radicalization?
Thank you for that excellent question, Tina. So over the last couple of years, we have been working very hard within various practitioners' communities that are focused on extremism, understanding extremism, preventing or interventions that are aimed at preventing radicalization. However, what we have noticed that there is a disproportionate focus on intervention rather than prevention programming. Yet, all of the research that we have conducted, along with many other scholars in this area, this domain of research, suggests that, in fact, it is much easier to prevent radicalization than it is to intervene or reverse it when a person has fully radicalized. However, we cannot expect to engage educators, educational staff, informal educators, adults working with children at all levels of education to engage effectively in preventing extremism, radicalization, targeted violence, hate fueled violence, if we haven't supported them sufficiently. And that support has to come through professional training programs like Reimagine Resilience that educate educators on risk factors for radicalization, extremism, hatred fueled violence. Also, we need to raise awareness around protective factors that can amplify what we call resilience to hate. And then lastly, we need to understand what is that critical role that all of us as educators can play in our classrooms, including myself here at Teachers College and at Columbia University, in preventing educational displacement and consequently targeted violence. I'm going to share with you a piece of research that we already actually shared with you in prior segments of the program this evening, but we will reiterate it again. And that is that when we asked this year students in 40 plus US states uh, how they felt about the experience and competency of their educators and educational staff in their schools in terms of handling incidents of biased speech, biased behavior, only 1%, and I'm going to say that again, only 1% of students have shared with us that they feel everyone in their school, all of the educational staff, all of the teachers, are in fact well equipped and trained to address those incidents of biased speech and behavior. That is a devastating statistic that we wish to address, and we can only address it through prevention and through training educators in reimagining resilience.
As we come to the close of our program, we have space for one more question, and this is again for you, Amra. And the question is, what role will Reimagine Resilience play in violence prevention frameworks in the future?
Thank you, Vic, for that question. Um, Over the years, in the past, scholarly and policy communities have often classified extremism as a foreign issue, an issue that is dealt with in other countries around the world, but not here domestically. However, the last few years have suggested otherwise. We are dealing with the increase in hate fueled violence, and we now recognize it, both scholarly community and policy making community, as a domestic internal problem that is undermining both social cohesion in the United States and our democracy. So I view Reimagine Resilience as becoming an increasingly impactful and very broad platform that will continue to lead the way by doing a couple of effective initiatives that I'm going to outline here for you, and hopefully you can join us in moving them forward. One is expanding and developing training programs for education personnel on what radicalization is, and having educators really understand that genuinely what is their role and how vital that role is in preventing extremism through pedagogical and classroom practices. Secondly, we will continue to expand our work to other populations. I'm going to share that we are already in development of another program that will engage middle school and high school students and have them engage in initiating local prevention initiatives and projects that we will facilitate here at Teachers College, Columbia University. And thirdly, and very importantly, we will continue to produce research that will help inform practice. We need evidence-based interventions and prevention programs that will continue to address hate-fueled violence that is on the rise. For instance, this is something that we haven't shared in prior segments of this evening's program, but we will share it Now, we have started to develop regression models using data that we have collected this year and just ended data collection a couple of weeks ago. And our preliminary regression models suggest that one's identity, whether we're talking about race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or another marker of one's identity, is not a significant predictor of educational displacement. However, students' experience of bias based on identity, is in fact an important predictor and triggers educational displacement. This is a critical piece of information that we will continue to integrate along with other research that is ongoing into the work that we will continue to develop through Reimagine Resilience. And with that, I want to end by thanking all of you for joining us today, in particular, educators, education leaders, staff, and students who are interested in preventing hate-fueled violence in our schools and communities. We hope that by sharing more information about Reimagine Resilience this evening, we will help inspire additional conversations in your own communities about our individual and collective responsibilities to help lessen hate in our schools and society. We also ask that you please reach out to us through our social media or our website, reimagineresilience.org, for more information on our professional training program and how we can partner with you. And as we end, we wish to once again thank the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for their support of our work. We also thank the president of Teachers College, Columbia University, Tom Bailey, for his introduction and support of our work, as well as the following teams at our institution that have made this webinar possible. Many thanks to the TC College Events team, the TC Generation Department, Digital Futures Institute, our facilities team, and Office of Sponsored Programs. And with that, we end our program for tonight, and we wish you a peaceful and safe evening.